Hello and welcome. My name is Lance Best of Communication and You in Auckland, New Zealand. I'm with Michelle Mills Porter, Bromsgrove in Worcestershire, UK. Cofton Hackett, less than 2,000 people. Many talents, including author, marketing on a shoestring, PR for free, natural networking, monkey marketing, phone genius, communication, authenticity. I got some of it, did I? I get some of it.
Yeah, you forgot pole dancing, Lance.
Oh, okay. Well, I missed that one out. And you're a tsunami survivor who discovered human magnificence in the aftermath, and now you help people to release their inner magnificence and teams to achieve more than the sum of their parts.
Yes, that's right.
Now, you talked about one thing. Can you share the block that you were able to move as a result of the tsunami? You talked something like that.
Yeah, and I've got to say, with all of those kind of sub-brands that you mentioned, it does sound like I do an awful lot of stuff, and people might struggle to see how it's connected. And I think we're constantly evolving, aren't we, Lance? And a lot of those things I don't necessarily do anymore because they've evolved. So the essence, I think we're on this continuous journey, and we should allow people to evolve and to kind of rebrand as they go and all that kind of stuff. But everything I do is about communication. In fact, the only thing I do is really about human communication, helping people to understand themselves and each other better. So there might be a kind of broad umbrella, and you might see me talking to organisations and going into corporates, but that's just a cover really for the real issue, which is helping people to get to the authentic self. That's really what I do. So you're right, it was being caught in the biggest natural disaster of our lives that set me on the understanding of this. And do you know what I was saying to someone earlier on? It takes forever for the penny to drop sometimes, doesn't it? And you look back and you think, well, how did I not get that sooner? But everyone learns in their own pace, and as they're shown new things, that's assimilated, and then the threads start to kind of knit together, and you realize what it is that you're meant to be doing. And the tsunami was 2004, so it's now 2018, and I'm still only really learning exactly what it is that made me change in the way that I did. But I firmly believe everything I'm doing is all focused around that core thing. And that core thing has to be that as human beings, we walk around communicating with other people and thinking we know other people when really we don't. And how can we if we don't know ourselves? So for me, what happened when we suddenly find ourselves in this life or death situation, everything is stripped back. The mask we wear is stripped back. The facade we put on, whether we mean to or not, is stripped back. And for me, before the tsunami, I was an incredibly successful businesswoman. My business was winning all sorts of awards. We'd taken the market by storm because we were doing something new, which was marketing, real hard-end marketing, resulting in very high-profile appointments, and we were doing it on a risk-free basis. So we were making some big waves. And we'd gone from a zero turnover to $500,000 turnover in just 3 years. And all of these awards and accolades surrounding us. And I thought that I knew what I was doing. I thought that was what I was meant to do. And when you're sitting there and your whole world has just come crashing around you, and you don't even know if you will ever get back home to see your family again, it's not my business that I was thinking about. It didn't even figure in my top 10.
Yeah.
Probably not my top 100. You know, the kind of things that you think about then are playing Scrabble with my mum and dad, you know, having hugs with my nieces and my nephews, and seeing my siblings, and my mum-in-law's roast potatoes, and, you know, all those things are the things that become important. And I suddenly realised how pointless my life was. When you're struck with something like that, you suddenly think, if I get home, what am I going to do? And it was a really big turning point for me on a subconscious level, because I suddenly realised what human values are about. And I saw some incredible things. I saw what happens when human beings are in that situation. I've seen how people will put their life on the line for a complete stranger. I've seen what is at the core of humanity. And we hear about it all the time, Lance. We hear about it when there's a terrorist attack or a natural disaster or a fire or somebody goes missing. These things bring people together. They bring communities together. They bring people together. Why? Because we forget all of that stuff that we do on a daily basis on our hamster wheel, and we get back to the true value. What do we value as human beings? Yeah. And that's what it's all about for me. I suddenly started to see people's values, what they were really about, what they really stood for. And there was a point in time when I actually saw my husband's true values. He wasn't my husband at the time. You know, we'd been together for a while, but we talked about marriage and put it on the back burner. But seeing him put my life before his nailed it for me. I thought, I'm not letting this one go. Why? Because his values matched mine, and there was this massive connection. And that's the thing about values. When you connect with someone else's values, when someone has the same values as you, there's an instinctive connection. And the opposite occurs, of course. When someone doesn't share your values, or when their values are opposed to yours, there's a conflict, a subconscious conflict. And I think that's really what it was about for me, Lance. When I finally managed to get home and I went back to my business, I literally, my husband thinks I'm a little bit over the top with my emotions sometimes. That's because he hasn't got any. But I am quite emotional. I'm okay with my emotions. But I looked around my office, and I looked around my boardroom, and I looked at all of these awards and all of these accolades, and I could have vomited, because it was just so meaningless. I was embarrassed. To me, I looked narcissism in the face. That's what it was to me. I thought, what is this? This is narcissistic. What makes me a better business owner than Jimmy Lau in Sri Lanka, who had just given up his garden to 150 refugees and emptied his wells for us? He didn't do that in the hope of us giving him money, or, you know, for any other reason apart from that's what he is about. That's what he believes in, and that's what he did. Why, therefore, was I sitting in the lap of luxury with all of these trappings around me, and he had nothing? You know, his fleet of ships had gone, his fleet of lorries had gone. All the people in the town that he employed were now jobless. What gave me the right to just sit here in the lap of luxury and watch that happen?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because you've just reminded me, you know, many years ago, there was something about handicapped children, and I'd just seen one of the African countries where all these kids were living in horrific circumstances. And then I saw this thing for, they're having an auction for handicapped children. So all my jewelry, everything went just like that. I gave it away, and I said, why am I wearing that when they're living the way they are? And so I gave it all away. And I understand. I also understand what you're talking about with communication. And I did connect everything as to coming. Look at my T-shirt. Can you see my T-shirt?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I've got lots of those because that's all we are. We're us, and we have communication. That's how we get on with each other. So, so my next comment was phone genius. Interesting title. What's the difference?
Yeah. So phone genius is about communicating at a genius level. So what I teach people in terms of communicating on the phone is picking up on all of those senses that we use as human beings, but we put aside. We put it aside because we think that, you know, that we're really clever with words, and, you know, we just have to write and send an email and stuff like that. But communicating over the phone just strips us of our most used sense, which is our visual sense. And a lot of people have a subconscious fear. They might not think that they have a fear. Oh, I don't have a fear of using the phone, Michelle. I'm quite happy to pick the phone up. I just didn't get around to it. And that's the key. What we find is that there is a subconscious fear of actually making those phone calls. They would rather wait until they see that person face to face. They would rather wait until they can send an email instead, or do something other than picking up that phone. And they don't realise that what they have is a subconscious fear. And that fear is very simple, really. If we're stripped of the sense that we use more than any other, then why would we not be afraid? It's the same as putting a blindfold on a child and stuffing them in a room because they don't know what their surroundings are. And that's the key thing about communicating on the phone. We are stripping ourselves of our visual senses. So what do we do when we're in that situation? Well, I have some friends who are blind to varying degrees, a lot of them very blind in terms of the scale of blindness, and that's the terminology they like to use as well. And you know, chatting with them and with them writing things in my book as well, the thing that we've come to the conclusion is that quite often if people lose a sense, then they can make their other senses switch up in order to kind of compensate for losing a sense. But if we take that same concept about communicating on the phone, we're stripping ourselves of our visual sense. So what we need to do is we need to switch up our other senses in order to be able to communicate better. So what I teach people to do is to switch up their hearing, to listen in a completely different way, to the extent that they can actually preempt what that person wants and what that person needs. So I know it might sound bizarre, but it's very easy when you know how to be able to assess people's body language. When you're on the other end of the phone, you can pick up what they're doing, whether they're belly button gazing, whether they're looking over their shoulder. There are things that you can pick up on. I teach people how to understand the traits of human behaviour so that they can also preempt what's the best way to communicate to that person. It's listening what's in between the words, not just the words that are being spoken. So all of that stuff sounds a bit woo-woo, doesn't it?
No, not at all. No, I can tell you something. I'll tell you. I don't like talking on the phone because I do pick up this stuff, and because I pick it up, I want to see it because I pick it up, and I get frustrated because I know if someone's bullshitting me, for example, I pick it, and I'm very wary of what I say when I'm at that point because I can be quite hard-nosed at that moment because I know what I'm picking up, but it's still that doesn't make for good telephone conversation when you feel like that.
Yeah, I mean I can completely understand that, Lance. And there are other things that people need to be aware of. The phone is still the very best way of communicating with someone if you can't see them face to face. There is nothing that gives you as much to work with as the phone. It's immediate, it's and people aren't just going to kind of file you. You've got an immediate audience there if you can reach that person. So there are other things that we need to be aware of if we want to get our personality across, because that's what people build rapport with. Then we have to understand what technology is doing to scupper our chances, and technology stops us building rapport.
Yep.
It stops us building rapport because it changes our voice. And it's really strange, Lance, because when I say to people, why do you not like the sound of your own voice? When you hear your voicemail message and you say, oh, is that me? Or you hear yourself on video, why do we not like our voice?
Oh, mine's horrible. I hate it. I hate it.
Well, here's the thing. Someone somewhere said, oh, that's because we don't hear ourselves. We hear ourselves internally, not externally. That is rubbish. I'm not saying the whole subject is rubbish, but when we're talking about communicating on the phone, what we need to understand is what technology does in order to scupper our chances. And this little device here changes our voice from analog, which is nice and sexy and curvaceous and full of personality, and it turns it into a digital version of that. Now, in order for the other person to hear on the other end of the phone, we need to turn it back into analog. But it's that process where we have the problem. That analog voice only has the blueprint of the digital version to work with. So what we get is we get a version of our voice, but not the whole package. So what that does, if you imagine that an analog voice or an analog sound is a little bit like a trombone, so you can go ooh, it slides, there's no gap in between. If you think about a digital version, it's actually blocky. It's more like playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on the piano. Mm-hmm. It's very blocky. There are bits missing. Now, we don't realise that. And if you listen to Alicia Keys or somebody like that playing the piano, it might sound beautiful. But when you get someone with a trained ear that listens to music in different forms, you will always see that they prefer to listen on vinyl rather than CD. Why is that? Because they get the full picture, or at least a bigger version of the picture. That's the same with what technology does to our voices. It cuts out the depth in our voice. So therefore, when we need to sound like we know what we're talking about, if we want to sound authoritative, then we need to lower our voice on the telephone, because it's going to chop out of those low notes. So we need to try and emphasize those low notes. It will cut out lots of these lovely curvaceous elements of your personality. So if you want to have the best chance of bringing yourself to almost feel like it's a face-to-face situation, we have to overcompensate for what's happening. So therefore we need to kind of ham up our performance on the phone a little bit more. We need to put more light and dark. We need to put more inflections in our voice. We need to put more depth into our voice. We need to pause more. There's loads of these things that actually build rapport on a subconscious level that other people just don't teach.
Yeah, I go into a lot of that when I do my workshops. Do you know what my father did? He wasn't around very much, but when he was, this is the sort of thing he would do, because he had letters after his name for elocution. And he recorded me once. Well, the stuff he recorded on then, many moons ago, was somewhat different equipment than it is today. And his words, this is what he said: "This is you. This is how bad you are." That's all he said. This is how bad you talk.
Yeah. And you know that there are some elements of our voice that that we don't like, that are highlighted over using technology. I know that if I do see this back, I'm going to sound like a proper Britney. You know, our accent becomes thicker and stronger. That's a really bizarre thing, but it's true. Our accents come across, you know, thicker than they probably are in real life, and it's something we just have to contend with.
It's coming over fine, but I know what you're saying. When you listen to it, you're going to be more critical.
Well, I also know that whenever I hear my own voice on any form of technology, it always sounds like I've got a cold. I always sound really nasally, and you know, face to face, I don't sound like I've got a cold all the time. But if I listen to my recorded voice, it does.
Yeah, I can understand that. Hey, yeah. How to prepare for a TED Talk?
Yes.
Come on then. How to prepare?
Practice, practice. It's interesting, actually. I've never done a TED Talk. I've done a TEDx. In the speaking world, you know, you should never say that you've done a TED Talk when actually you've done a TEDx, because they are different things.
Yeah, I know, they get hot under the collar, especially what's his name on the speakers. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You've got to say TEDx, and it's a TEDx that I've done. I think the most important thing is making sure that whatever message you want to get across is focused on that. You focus on the audience and what they're going to get from it. I've seen, the more TEDx talks I see, the more I realise that people are, even if it's subconscious, they are just thinking, oh wow, I've got a platform, I've got an audience, and the talk just becomes about them. And it, you know, that there is nothing that's going to turn off an audience more than someone standing up there saying, aren't I wonderful? Look what I've done. If I can do it, anyone can do it. Actually, that's not the message we need to hear. No. So I think the most important thing when preparing for a TEDx is, first of all, make sure that you are giving, that you are in service to others. And this is a misconception, I think, when people think that speakers are there to perform because they're you know, full of themselves and all the rest of it. Actually, that's not true. The best speakers are the speakers that realise they are in service to others. When you get that, it's a bit of a breakthrough moment. I think all speakers start off wanting to have the stage and go, look at me, look at me. There has to be a bit of that performance element, otherwise we'd never get up there and do it. But there is a turning point. And when I've taken new speakers under my wing and I've helped them on their speaking journey, I love seeing that turning point. I love seeing it when it finally switches and they finally get it. Actually, this is about everyone else. It's not about me. And that's a beautiful thing to see.
Whenever on my workshops, when everybody has to get up at least twice and speak in front of the group, that they don't know this, but they have to. I always ask them to tell us something that they can actually connect with. It always has to be something personal, something they like, a book or something, because I know that if you talk about that, you bring your natural emotions in. Once you've done that, then you can modify what you want to talk about.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. You use the words, and I've put English understatement, a bit of a flood.
Yeah, when we were caught in the tsunami, I reached my phone and we didn't know what had happened. I mean, bear in mind that when we first woke up and looked out the window, we were on the 3rd floor of our hotel and the water was not that far beneath us. It was, you know, what woke us was this swishing sound, like there was a storm or something, and we'd known that it was a beautiful day, and there was this banging, incessant banging that we didn't understand, and that's what woke us. When we looked out the window, the swishing noise was the tops of the palm trees being swished in the tsunami water, and it was all around us. I mean, it's got to be 30, 40 foot deep there, because our hotel was on a slope down to the sea, so the sea had come up that slope, and then we were on the 3rd floor. So it's got to be between 30 and 40 foot deep by then. All the buildings around us, you know, were just being washed away. the dive centre right next door to us, its roof was being lifted up and carried by the water. And as far as the eye could see, looking all around the hotel, as far as the eye could see, it was just water, just as deep inland.
But however you explain it to people, people can't get it. If they weren't there, they can't get it in the way that you did, can they? I mean, you know, it's so difficult to imagine, isn't it?
The way that I try and describe it, I try and access people's senses so they can get more of a feeling for it. And especially when I'm delivering the talk, I try and access those senses. I try and tell them what it smelt like, what it felt like, what real fear feels like. And for me, if ever you've had too much English mustard or too much wasabi in one go, you can feel this burning, and you know that it's going to go up your nose, and it's going to fizz, and it's going to go down your head, and then it's going to go down your body, and it's inevitable. You know that's going to happen, and that for me is what real fear is like. It's this, you know, this burning sensation of panic as your body tries to take over and get into survival mode. But just going back to what you said about that message, we didn't see another soul. Everyone had gone. So for us, we didn't know whether it was the end of the world. We didn't know whether it was the apocalypse. We didn't know whether a nuclear bomb had gone off on the other side of the planet, and this was the after effect. So we really didn't know what it was. We thought maybe it was just local. So when I managed to get the phone, I thought, I've just got to get a message home. And I sent a text to my sister and to Stuart's sister, and it just said, there's been a bit of a flood, but we're okay. But we had no way of knowing how big it was. We didn't know it was going to be the biggest natural disaster in our living history. We didn't know it was going to reach the coast of Africa. We didn't know it was going to kill 250,000 people.
How did you get away from that spot then?
It took a long while for the water to recede, enough for us to be able to half wade and half swim out of the hotel safely. And in that time, we'd seen a couple of people from our dive party that were on the other side of the Gaul Road, and we'd been kind of shouting and waving at each other over the road. And they told us to come and join them because it seemed like our hotel was just lilting towards the sea. And if you can imagine, all the sewage is, you know, raw sewage in the water, and diesel and filth and death and everything. I mean, it's just vile. But when you're in that situation, you don't know if anything's going to blow up. You don't know if it's going to fall into the sea and, you know, and crush you. We just had to get out.
Yeah.
So we kind of half waded and half swam and got out and went and joined our friends on the opposite side of the road. And then for hours, the water kept coming back in really deep and then going back out again. And it just carried on doing that over a period of time.
So you actually stayed in the same area, and eventually it went away?
We did. Well, we stayed in that area, and I can't tell you what happens with the sense of time. I can't tell you how long it was. I would guess that it was, you know, 3 or 4 hours before the water had receded enough, showing, you know, basically showing all the rubble and where the Gaul Road had just been knocked out, and there was corrugated iron roofs just strewn across the ground with glass and bricks and everything. But we saw the owner of the dive centre, Cami. We saw him coming down the road, and he had all of the people that worked with him at the dive centre, all of the boat boys and all the people that were employed by him. And he was just kind of purposefully coming down this road, and we shouted and waved at him. And he just immediately said, get down, and we just did what he said. Quite a formidable character, really, only young, but quite a formidable character. And when we got down, he took one of the boat boys and he said something to them, and this boat boy force-marched us to his uncle's home, Jimmy Lau, who lived up this mountain a couple of miles inland, up the biggest hill that there was around. So, you know, that was an affluent place really for people to live, and that's where his home was. And we got there, we were force marched there, opened up the gates, and there's over 100 refugees, people, all of, different languages, different races, just all piled into that garden. Just some people were sobbing, some people were just in shock. Some people were actually holding what they were holding when the tsunami hit. One of our friends was holding his flip-flop, and someone else was holding a plate, and it was almost like shock had kind of set in and they couldn't let go of these things. So it was a mixture of emotions all the way through. This mixture of emotions, all the stuff that goes on in your head, it's bizarre. You're grateful.
I can definitely
Grateful to be alive, but on the other hand, there's other emotions like, why did nobody see if we were okay? Why did nobody wait for us? And it's a mix of emotions. It really is.
The hotel's empty and you were still there. That's just that's unimaginative.
I was in the forces, and it's not just about being in the forces, it's my values. I would never leave someone behind. And for me, there was this feeling that we'd been left behind, which is bizarre, really, because when you're in that life or death situation, you've got to save yourself and you've got to save the people you're with. So you can't expect people to knock on the door and say, hello, is there anybody in there? Would you like to exit the building? There seems to be a bit of a problem. It's just not going to happen, is it? So you have to understand that you're going to have these emotions and try and make sense of them.
The other day when I arrived when I was in Melbourne, I was playing golf, and it's not the same, but it's the same mental type of thing with humans, is that they were going to put me with a group, but there was another guy on his own, and I said, well, you can't put me with a group and leave him on his own. It's better that I play with him, because then he's got someone to play with. And yet so many people just don't care about that. They just leave someone on their own. Same sort of mentality, isn't it? They don't care.
I think it's that's the crux of it, Lance. Is it because they don't care, or is it because they have different priorities? Is it because they've got children they're looking after, or again, there was another situation where, in fact, they managed, this is a week later, the Sri Lankans had managed to find a truck and find some diesel washed up somewhere else, and they put it together, and they said, right, we're getting you lot out to Colombo, so pack your stuff, we're going. And all of our dive team from the UK and a few other people, we were all going to get onto this minibus, and then all of a sudden they're standing there saying, oh, there aren't enough seats. Well, me being me, apparently I said, well, look, I'm not injured. I didn't know that I picked up a horrendous internal infection and other things, but physically I wasn't injured. So I said, look, take the seats. I'll wait here. We'll wait until there's another opportunity. So I can't help, that's who I am. But oh my God, Lance, when that minibus left, it felt like the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, couldn't someone have put me on their lap? Couldn't someone have squished up? Because I wouldn't have left without me. Why did you leave without me? But then my husband tells me, well, you offered. So, but something happened a few miles down the road, because they came back. And they came back and they said, do you know what? We can fit you in. So it was all okay.
If it had been me, I would have insisted we took everybody.
You'd have got people sitting on the roof and all sorts, wouldn't you? But I don't know. It's just, again, you're questioned time and time again in an environment like that. You're tested. Your values are tested. Your morals are tested. Everything is tested. And, it really does shape who you are and how you live your life moving forward.
You mentioned 28,000 Hiroshima bombs.
Yeah, you see, my maths is horrendous. I have a real problem with figures. It wasn't 28,000 Hiroshima bombs at all. So I need to apologise for that, Lance. What happened is 30 kilometres below the Earth's crust, there was this earthquake, and it was 120 kilometers long, and it shifted 20 meters. So the Earth's crust was shifted by 20 meters in height for a length of 1,200 kilometers. And when I ask people, what do you think, what kind of energy do you think could have caused an earthquake of that size? I say, let's measure it in Hiroshima bombs. How many do you think it was? And people say 2 or 3 or 10. And I'll say, keep going. They'll say 20. And then I say, actually, the real figure is 23. And everyone goes, and then I say, 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. And that's where everyone goes, so it's 23,000 Hiroshima bombs, not 28,000. My apologies.
That's still a lot of bombs.
It's only 5,000 or so, who cares? No, it's still an unimaginable amount.
But 1,250 kilometers, that's a long shift for raising the level.
It's huge. I mean, there are people that say that it knocked the Earth off its axis. There are other people that say other things. I'm not an expert in that field, so I don't know. All I know is that if something of that size, of that magnitude, can put our planet into so much jeopardy, then you can't expect to not have the fallout that we have, the death, the destruction. But also, when you walk away unscathed or virtually unscathed from something like that, if you don't do something to change your life, then more fool you.
Yeah. Why have I written down the next word, uniform? Is there something about a uniform? Can you remember what that was?
No. Uniform or unicorn?
Uniform. Because the next thing I've written is, have you done any acting?
Yeah, I have done a bit of acting. Only, what have you written that down for, Lance? Have you been stalking me or something?
Well, you see, what I do is I watch your videos and read all the stuff that you've written and so forth.
Okay.
And as I said, I pick things up. I mean, one of the things that I'm not sure, I didn't write this down, but one thing that, I don't know if I saw something recently or whatever it is, and I said to myself, part of you is quite a serious person, but you seem to be busting out at the moment. It's like you realize that life isn't that serious. So I noticed in you for some reason that that's the sort of movement that you're making. It's like, well, what the hell? It's, you know, sort of, we only live once. Let's have a ball.
Yeah, I think there's my default position is humour. So my default position, when I'm embarrassed or when I'm uncertain, I use humour and I hide behind it. And I think you are incredibly intuitive. I know that of you, and I'm pretty sure we share our core values.
I'm pretty sure we do too, yes.
Yeah, we have to. And I think one of the journey that I've been on is actually learning to not hide behind comedy and actually to be truly authentic. And I guess when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an actor. That's all I wanted to do. And I used to think that it would be really easy to make people laugh because all you've got to do is fall over, or, you know, perhaps your knickers fall down on stage, you'll get a laugh. But imagine what it would be like to do a monologue and to have the audience in your hand and to see them in tears. Imagine how that would feel if you could evoke that kind of emotion. And I guess that's come true. When I first came back from the tsunami, my sole job was to raise money. We launched the Hickadua Village Fund. I became the PRO, and I went out there at every opportunity and I told my story on radio, on TV, in breakfast meetings, networking meetings, stuff like that. And my only job was to raise money. So I would tell people as much as I could, and I would move them. I would be emotive. I would make people cry, because if they did, then they'd put their hand in their pockets and give me their money. So I guess I have been on this journey of learning how you can make somebody else in the audience feel what you want them to feel. How can you get that across? But funnily enough, I've just put myself forward for comedy night at Inspire, the Professional Speaking Association. So I'm now doing a stand-up comedy routine in less than 2 weeks' time. And I have no idea why.
That is a challenge.
I'm just telling stories about myself, Lance. Believe me, there is plenty of stuff I do that is ridiculous and funny because it's ridiculous. So I'm safe with stories. I'm just going to tell some true stories about how stupid I am.
Well, I think they're true. It gets them. Now, I've written quite a few things here, maybe one at a time. Stronger teams.
Yeah. So what I do is in the corporate world, I help people to empower their people. I help them to engage better with their people. And if they get that right, then what they see is they see their team excelling. Yeah. But it all starts with understanding yourself. So I use behavior analyses and tools and things like that to be able to help people to understand themselves first. When they understand themselves and when they see this mirror and this analysis report that tells them of their subconscious behavior and their values as a human being and all of those things on paper, then they've got some evidence, they've got some proof. And that is very empowering. What we then do is we see them as a team and we learn about how we can work together better. And again, this goes back to the tsunami. What I found in Jimmy Lal's garden is that even though there were over 100 people speaking different languages and everything, the first thing we needed to do was to try and make sure that everyone got a message home. Well, I had my phone on me, but it didn't have, it was flat. I didn't have a battery, I didn't have a charger. Somebody else had a SIM card, somebody else had a battery, and none of them would configure correctly. So somehow these people got together and we ended up patching a phone together that worked. And then by organising everyone, I made sure that every single person was able to get one message home, and that would have been a lifeline for every family who had somebody out there to know that their loved one was alive. So to organise that and make sure that over 150 people, all speaking different languages, managed to get one phone call home, one message that they were alive, that was a massive feat. And that could only have happened if we'd have all put our skills together and come up with it. So there's this thing about, we all have these wonderful talents that perhaps we forget that we have and we don't bring them out. But in a life or death situation, or in in other situations where it's required, we can reach in and bring it out. We remember stuff. But the beauty is, if we pull all of that together, then we can create something that is actually bigger than the sum of its parts. Now, I don't know if do you sing, Lance? Have you ever done any singing?
Oh, I'll tell you how good I am. Someone said to me once, "I'll never be afraid of karaoke because I could never be as bad as you are."
That's mean.
That's how bad I am.
Yeah. Let me give you an analogy that I hope people will understand. I've done a lot of singing, and one of my favourite types of singing is barbershop. So I sing ladies barbershop. I've sung in a quartet, had my own quartet, sung in a chorus as well, and it's close harmony. So if you have, let's imagine I'm in my quartet. If you have got 4 people who are singing 4 different notes and they're singing them well, then what you can do, if it's a close harmony, what you can do is you can create what's called an overtone. And it's yeah.
I read about that. I'm trying to understand what that is. Now you're explaining it. Yes.
Yeah. So it's basically, you've got these 4 notes and that's what's being sung. But what's created when you put those 4 notes together is another note over the top of these notes. No one is singing it. No one is singing that note, but it happens. It's like an echo and it forms a new note. And it is the most amazing thing. When you achieve that as a singer, it feels like you've just put your head in a bell, and you can hear this vibration. It is amazing. It gives you shivers, and anyone that sings harmony singing and can achieve an overnote will feel exactly that. That is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of people putting their skills together. If everyone gets their skills out and they put it together, then there is a chance that we can create an overtone, something that is bigger than the sum of its parts. And we see snippets of that, Nance. We see snippets of it when you find out that £8.6 billion was raised after the tsunami. That might sound like an obscure figure, but that's more than £1 for every single person that is alive on this planet. That is an astronomical amount of money. And it's all comes in little bits.
I think it's amazing. Also, I put on my timeline today, I read that our Prime Minister, that we're the youngest Prime Minister in the world or whatever, she said we have to change Me Too to We Too. And I thought, yes, that's what we must do, change Me Too to We Too. And,
yeah.
Which is exactly in the same way as what you're saying. It's exactly the same. We must all pull together.
I think that, and the thing that I say in my talks is that we can argue with everyone. We can have beef. We can have arguments. We can have tension, and we find that across the planet. We find it in our organisations. Now, I know that if we were suddenly attacked by aliens, then every race would come together. We would come together as one race, the human race, and we would come together and I just got a lovely feeling of those films where we succeed as a human race. But it's a beautiful thing. If we do come together, we are incredibly powerful. And why do we have to wait until a disaster to realise just how powerful we can be? And you take that down to an organisation who are in conflict with each other, who are fighting the competition or whatever it might be. If you get those people aligned and you get those people fired up, motivated by activating their values, which gives them motivation, then boom, you can see this massive increase of energy, and the results come flying. It's just they're aligned and things start to happen. It's just what I love doing.
At a smaller level, it's quite easy to create. It's creating it at the bigger level, more people, getting people off the current path, which they're with their blinkers, and getting them to see the bigger picture, that they still win. They don't lose anything by doing that.
I don't know any other way to start that process happening apart from at the ground level. If you can teach one person how to reach in and get their magnificence out and share it with others, then you can start the domino effect. Yes. I don't see how you can start from the top and work down.
Absolutely, 100%. Because of time, I'll just rattle off the other things. Perhaps you can put this lot in a box. Increased performance, cultural harmony, leadership success, recruiting for longevity, motivation, conflict management, duplicating or replacing stars, supercharged sales, excelling performance.
Yeah, those are just all the symptoms, really, of the one issue, the issue. If you can understand the motivation, the values of your people, then you can help them to understand each other, and every single one of those things that you just reeled off there can be fixed, can be achieved. But it's just one thing. It's not loads of different things. It's just one thing. The key is understanding your values. Who are you as a human being? What is going to allow you to be your true, authentic self?
So how do you get people to listen when you know that sort of thing helps solve profit stagnation, discord, conflict, deficiency, attrition, recurring recruitment fees? How do you get people to listen? Because this is the biggest issue for some people like yourself and myself, and I know some others. The difficulty is getting people to see the potential.
Yeah, and it's the age-old question, isn't it, Lance? You know, if I knew that, then I'd be a millionaire probably. I'd probably be living in Sri Lanka running an orphanage with all of my millions and stuff like that, but I'd still be a millionaire. The fact is that I don't want to have to sell it to anyone. Who wants to have to sell anything? I want people to flock to me. I want people to say, Michelle, you're right, this is the way, help me. And I would love to help them. So it's a very difficult thing. How do you get that message out? Well, I guess that's why I tell the Human Magnificent story. If I can deliver something that makes people stop and think, then maybe they will start to believe that they can make the changes that are going to give them this full list of stuff that's going to make a difference to their organisation or their life or whatever. I don't know how else to answer that.
Yeah. So something that I can't understand is that there's a lot of gullible people, bosses who pay fortunes for training that actually is going to take their business nowhere. They don't, for example, take note of the training programs they've already had so they can duplicate. But I don't understand how easy some people, what is it that allows people to be able to fool people for so long? Because there are a lot of people out there who are fooling people and getting paid big bucks for it.
I think it's Emperor's New Clothes, isn't it? There are some people that spend a lot of money on their reputation, on their brands, on appearing to be something they're not. And people like you and me and other people who are aware of their values would never allow that to happen. And therefore we would never overpromise. So I guess the people that are in the positions of hiring in others in order to do it, they're the ones that need to be awakened to their own values, because if they are, they'll be able to see the values in other people. There's a danger, because as human beings, we have almost this sheep mentality. We like to do things that other people have said are successful. If we have two shops and one of them is both selling the same things at the same prices, if one of them is inundated with people trying to get in through the door and the other one is empty, 90% of us would go to the one that is overflowing with people. So that's human nature. There's not a lot we can do to change that. But if the people that are in the decision-making positions actually chose somebody that resonated with their values, rather than how big their reputation is or how big their fees are, that's not a reflection of how good they are. Choose somebody that matches your values and you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I like what you said, overpromise, because I couldn't do that. No. I won't do that.
No.
I would never overpromise. I would never promise to do something I can't guarantee that I could do.
Yeah.
So how would you present soap dispensers to the Pope?
How would I present soap dispensers to the Pope?
Yeah.
God questions that.
Well, you said something about it, and I picked it up somewhere from something that you said.
Oh my gosh. Do you know what, Lance? If I said that was before the tsunami. Honestly, that's a long, long time ago.
But how would you do it?
I don't know. I can't even remember. That was probably, I'll tell you what, Lance, that was probably to do with marketing or sales when I was not in my authentic self, you know? And now I am. Now I understand what I'm on this planet to do. And what I'm on this planet to do is to help people understand who they are and who other people are, how they can get on with other people, how they can build rapport, how they can come together. That's my mission in life. So selling soap dispensers to the Pope is just not my agenda. If he wants one, he can get one on Amazon.
I put some other notes here. Collaboration, the power of, what is possible if we all pull together. Why don't we think big? stop moaning about everything you've said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unleashing human potential. Sales, innovation, promo, no razzmatazz, just a great short, informal, informational style. That you're talking about your delivery, I think. Three-dimensional profile. Well, there's a whole lot of stuff, so I want to ask you something completely different now. If I go to my spreadsheet, and if you give me a number between 1 and 245.
180.
Okay. 180. 180. If you could witness, I don't believe this. If you could witness any event of the past, present, or future, what would it be?
If I could witness an event.
Any event of the past, present, or future, what would it be?
I want to witness human beings coming together in the future. I want to witness what happens when human beings come together, when they bring their skills, they put them together, and to see something incredible happen, something powerful, energetic, incredible happen as a result of that. That day will come. That day will come. I don't know when it will be or what will trigger it, but it will come. And if I could just witness that, I would feel completely fulfilled.
I hear what you're saying. Part of me says that there'll be a lot of people that will be scared of that. And that's why it won't happen.
Yeah.
Fear.
Yeah.
Because we are human, and fear is a major part of us.
Yeah.
So I just wonder whether that's, I'd love to see it. And I also try and comprehend what that would be like, because I know that a lot of people would be filled with fear.
I think that all boils down to that most wonderful quote about our biggest fear. And it's true. Our biggest fear is just that, Lance. What could we possibly achieve?
Nelson Mandela.
How big is it? Yeah, exactly.
Mandela. Or Marianne Williamson, who...
It was Marianne Williamson that wrote it for him. Nelson Mandela obviously made it famous, but it is that, I mean, that just, if anyone doesn't know it, just look it up, because that's my mantra. It really is. And there have been snippets in my life. The tsunami isn't the only thing. There have been other snippets in my life when I felt something incredibly massive, something where I'm suddenly engaged, suddenly feel that there's this vibration of energy across the world, and I'm part of it. And I don't know how I slipped into that, but it doesn't sustain. I slip out of it. I slip into it. I slip out of it. One time, for another story, was when I had a rainbow come to me and completely envelop me, and it was just the most incredible thing. And it just shot all of my beliefs, everything I believed in, just threw it up into the air, you know. And it's never really landed in one piece, you know. It still leaves me with more questions than anything else. But I'm so grateful for it, and I know that that's going to happen again. You know, it's happened several times in my life so far. When I finally figure it out, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I remember some things like, we've got no rights. We are magnificent human beings, and we have unlimited power. That's the sort of message, isn't it?
Yeah.
A beautiful message. So another one between 1 and 245.
8. Please.
8. Oh, I like this one. I'm interested to hear what you'll say. What do you think of the media? And explain your answer.
Oh, we could have gladly killed the media in the aftermath of the tsunami. I'm going to tell you a very, very quick story, which will explain why. I remember getting a phone call in the middle of the night, or a text message rather, in the middle of the night from my brother. And my brother said on this text message, we're going to get you home. The Sun, meaning the newspaper, have organised, they're organising a rescue party, and they're coming for you. And oh my God, Lance, I can't tell, we had no idea when we were ever going to make it home. But I went round to everyone I knew, just waking them up from their slumber in the garden and whispering in their ear, it's okay, someone's coming to get us, someone's coming to get us. And oh my God, the feeling they gave us, the hope they gave us was incredible. It never happened. What they did is they were collating information from my brother, who was a policeman. They were collecting information from him to make a sensationalised story. And in the Sun newspaper, it said that he'd managed to get this text to me, and I'd called him back. And you'll still find this online somewhere. And it says that I said to him, you know, we've run out of water. There's one person here with gangrene, and that was true. These were facts, you know. And then it said, and now the crocs are coming in. And with that, the phone went dead. I've never seen a crocodile up close in my life, Lance. I never said that. They used it for the story. Every other newspaper picked that story up and used it. They transported me to different countries, to different places, to different scenarios, but they all used the same story. You don't know. They don't know what they did to our hearts. They don't know what they did to us when we suddenly thought we were going to be saved. And now all we realise is that they're just trying to sell papers off the back of our misery.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking, heartbreaking. Shame on you. I just think if there are people out there,
100% of the way, I tell you.
Yeah. If there are people out there in the journalism, in that industry, journalists that have the right ethics and morals, then fair play. I'll back you all the way. For all the others out there, I have no words.
Right, what I want to do now, before signing off, I did have one question. It was something like 250,000 deaths, wasn't it?
Yes.
What number of people are affected because of it? Because 250,000 is just the deaths.
Yeah.
We've already talked about a few people. So how many people actually are affected because of that 250,000? Did you have any?
Well, there's no way of telling the numbers. What I say when I'm speaking is that there were 150,000 people we knew of that died of diseases or illnesses relating to that tsunami. The amount of people that were displaced or traumatized or had long-term illness, there's no way of counting. I had cancer not long after the tsunami. It wasn't caused by the tsunami, but I bet my bottom dollar that the trauma of that event triggered something in me on a cellular level. So, you know, luckily I survived, but who's to say what happened as a knock-on effect?
Well, what I'm thinking of is not just those numbers, but also the fact that you've got a brother, you've got other people that are all connected to you. So whenever there's an accident, you think there's maybe 4 people in an accident, but we know there's maybe 100 people affected. I'm just wondering how many people are affected. If there's 250,000 deaths, how many people? You got to be talking about maybe 5 or 6 million.
I think more than that. Every single person that I speak to and that finds out that I've been in the tsunami, every person says that they know someone who was in the tsunami, or they knew someone who was near, or they had a neighbour whose son was. I think the answer to that lies in the amount of money that was raised, because that shows you something about how many people it touched. So if there's £8.6 billion raised, then it has to be multi-million amounts of people that were touched and affected as a result.
Yeah. So before I sign off and give you the last word, it's a slot for you to promo you in whatever way you want. I'm just not comfortable with that, Lance. I appreciate it. But
but I want to do this because I want to give. So if people feel compelled to get in touch with me, then that's great, that's wonderful. But I don't really know.
Well, tell them how to get in touch with you.
Okay, so my website is mmp.uk.com, and that stands for Michelle Mills Porter. On there are lots of details about my courses, about what I speak about what I've done for other organisations. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, which is just the most amazing channel for anyone in business. And again, there's only one Michelle Mills Porter. So if you look at Michelle Mills Porter on LinkedIn, you will get my ugly mug. Just send me a connection. And if you can put a message in there to say that you've seen this, then that will give me some context in terms of how we might know each other.
Fantastic. So my name's Lance Best, Communication and You, Auckland, New Zealand, speaking from Singapore, and I've been speaking to Michelle Mills Porter, Bromsgrove, Worcestershire, UK, in a little village, no more than 2,000 people. Delightful, I'm sure, too. And the last word goes to Michelle.
Well, thank you so much, Lance, for everything you do. I'm thrilled to be part of it. And I'm just sending out love to everyone that watches this. So, yeah, try and find your authenticity and find your reason for being on the planet, and then just go out and share it.